we're going to do a 16 seed bracket. We're going to do a little tournament between some of the most prolific and popular franchises in the horror movie genre. We're going to pit them against each other and figure out which was the best original film. For the second video, we'll move on to the direct sequels, the part 2s. The third video, go figure, it's going to be part 3s up until we get to a point to where there's not enough contenders anymore because some of these movies only go up to part 5 or part 6. Get what I'm saying here? Now, what are some rules, some caveats? First caveat would be, this is how I see things. I'm not rating these on importance or impact to the genre. This is how I like these movies, which ones I tend to go to and watch more often, what they mean to my personal fandom, which means you're going to get pissed off probably once, twice, 1,000 times. Now, the other thing we need to talk about is seeding. Now, usually you would have 1 seed versus 16 seed like we have here, but usually in sports it'd be best record versus worst record. Can't do that with movies. Movies don't have records per se. And I don't want to rely on things like Rotten Tomatoes score because Rotten Tomatoes is kind of a shame operation. There, I said it. So instead, we're just going to do something cool. We're going to make it fun. We're going to do new school versus old school. So higher seeds, or lower seeds, I should say, like number 1 seed is going to be the oldest movie in this bracket. Our lowest seed, the 16th seed, will be the newest movie in this bracket. Now, I think we've covered all the groundwork here, so let's go ahead and get our hands dirty. Let's get in there. Let's mess it around. Let's have fun. Number 1 is Psycho, going against the 16th seed, The Conjuring. Do we have ourselves a Cinderella story? Do we have a major upset that breaks everybody's brackets? We do not. I'm going with Psycho. I am a slasher guy. Psycho is the granddaddy of all the slashers. It gives us a very interesting, genial, kind killer in Norman Bates, who has a lot more going on, has some really deep-seated mommy issues. There's a fun mystery there. There's iconic score. There's the shower scene. There's all sorts of iconography with the Bates Motel. And The Conjuring is just a really executed demon possession movie. So it can't come for the throat of Norman Bates. It's just not on that level for me. Now, moving on over to the other side of the bracket, you see we have The Exorcist taking on The Purge. And I mean, come on, get out of here. That's not going to happen. The power of Christ compels The Purge to get the F out of here. You ain't ready for what Reagan is bringing to the table. The Exorcist is one of the scariest movies of all time. It's one of the most impactful movies of all time. It all but traumatized me as a child. And The Purge is just a decent popcorn horror movie. So that was easy. Now, God, here we go. Number 3 is Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And the lowly number 14 seed is Insidious. And this happens every March Madness. You get a big upset. You get an underdog, a Cinderella story. And that's what we have here, folks. We have Insidious breaking down Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I know. Look, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, there's been 1,000,001 college thesis and dissertations written about this movie. It's groundbreaking. It's one of the most disturbing, if not the most disturbing movies of all time. But Insidious is just very near and dear to my personal fandom. I love the story. I love the family. I love the designs. I love those crazy, wacky strings that greet you at the beginning of the movie. And I love that James Wan sat down and wrote out a list of all the tropes in horror movies and made sure that his movie denied them at every turn. I love that they do little things like the seance scene. You think, maybe I've seen something like this. And then Elise puts on that gas mask and things just get all spooky, boogly, woogly. And you're like, I've never seen it done quite like that before. Whereas Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I'm like, dude, it's freaking great for what it is. But what it is something that I don't want to go to very often. It's something that I have much more respect for than I do actual personal love. You follow me? No, you hate me? You know what? I understand. Now, the 4th seed, Halloween versus Paranormal Activity. And obviously Paranormal Activity is going to win here. I'm just kidding. It's Halloween. Please undo your dislike. Please resubscribe. Don't hate me. It's obviously Halloween. You know Halloween's one of my favorites. You know the Halloween films are probably going to fare well in each bracket, and you're going to have to bring way more heat than what Paranormal Activity is, even if I do like that movie more than most folks. Where's our 5 seed? Our 5 seed, we have Friday the 13th, the original, the one with Pamela Voorhees, not Jason Voorhees, taking on Saw. Oops, I did it again. I'm going with Saw. James Wan is causing a lot of problems here in this bracket. I know a lot of people are going to hate me, but Nate, you said you're a slasher fan. I am. And I'm a Friday the 13th fan. But when you say Friday the 13th, I think Jason Voorhees. My mind goes to entries like Part 2, Part 4, The Final Chapter, or Jason Lives, even The New Blood, or the remake. I don't really watch the original all that often. It's a slog. It's a very padded, boring movie that in my heart, if I'm honest with myself, I just don't really love and have never really loved. I like it at best. Whereas Saw has one of the best horror twists of all times. It's a very like Seven S tale that does a lot of different things. You have Zeb's overture pounding in there at the moment, at the climax, to where you're like, I'm shaking. You don't really have anything like that with Friday the 13th original. And maybe you do if you're an older audience, but to me, even the final little twist of him pumping out of the water, that one last jump scare, I'm like, dude, come on. That's just ripping off Carrie in the most obvious way. So that ain't going to get it done here. So another big upset. Now, moving over here, 6th seed, Evil Dead versus Final Destination. That first Final Destination film is a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun when I was a kid. I loved the movie, but it ain't Evil Dead. Evil Dead is one of the best of all time. Sam Raimi, I mean, that's going to be hard to contend with. That's going to be a fun one in the next round, Insidious and Evil Dead. And we'll see what happens there. But now, 9 seed is Child's Play, taking on the 8th seed, Hellraiser. And that is a good matchup. I will say that ultimately, whoever is the victor here, the loser puts up a good fight, because I love these movies and they're on like the same plane for me. And I think I'm just going to lean in the direction of Andy Barclay and his mom. That story at the heart of things, that sentimentality, that just works for me better than the ooey gooey gross perversion of Hellraiser. Even though I do love ooey gooey perversion, I'm going to give it to Child's Play. You don't fuck with the Chuck, and we're not going to in the first round. All right. The Purge is out. Scream versus Nightmare on Elm Street. Oh my God. R.I.P. Wes Craven. I hate to do it. This is that one when you look at the bracket, you're like, oh Jesus, one of those teams is going out that early. A team that should probably make a Final Four run is going to go out in the first round, because that's just the way things happened. That's just the way things happened. We have Wes Craven's babies, Nightmare on Elm Street and Scream, facing off in the very first round. Two movies that, if I was just going to rank these would both probably be in the top 4, top 5 of this list. And I'm going to give it to Scream. Look, I love Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a very low budget movie that achieves way more than it has any right to. But that being said, you can tell in certain moments just how low budget it is. And I just prefer Ghostface to Freddy Krueger. There, I said it. I know that's going to get me absolutely torn apart by some of you guys, but I love that Roger L. Jackson voice coming over the phone, playing with his victims, engaging them in trivia, chasing through the house, all that good stuff. For me, it is Scream, no matter how hard this is as a decision. Now we're just going to go back and forth like this. So let's say Psycho versus Child's Play next. Psycho versus Child's Play. It's Psycho. I love that first Child's Play movie, but I also love Psycho, and Psycho is just a much more impressive film. And I know that some people are going to call bullshit because it's a black and white movie, and it seems like kind of a chalky pick, but that's just the truth, man. I've done a video on here about the craziest facts about Psycho and about the making of Psycho. And I just really love that series. I think it's actually underrated at this point. I think a lot of people go, yeah, okay, the original's a classic. And they don't know how good the follow-ups are. I really love the Norman Bates character. And I'm just going to leave it at that. We're going to go ahead and save some time and get on to the next one. Let's say The Exorcist versus Scream. Oh, these two might be the most important horror movies to my being a fan, because when I saw The Exorcist as a kid, I saw it in like 3rd or 4th grade, and it really did freak me the F out. Like, it kept me up for months, where all I could think about was Pazuzu's face flashing in the dark, or about Reagan's scarred up green nasty face, about the cold air being breathed in that room, about the slow zoom on the door, and just clutching my dad's arm while I watched it, being like, please don't go in that room. Why go in the room? Why am I watching this? And just having all sorts of dreams about demons and possession, and just being scared out of my mind, to where I actually took a water bottle, took a Sharpie, and wrote holy water on it, because I was a kid and didn't know how things worked. I just was like, you know what? If I wake up and there's some sort of malevolent force in my room, I'm just going to open this bottle and start throwing stuff at it and hope my holy water works. So The Exorcist is super important to me. But Scream is too, because then after The Exorcist, I tried to like go for that high of being that shook and scared out of my mind. And I've never been that scared ever since. But I watched Scream and I was like, this is a different type of high. This is like an adrenaline rush. I feel seen. I feel that I'm in this movie. I'm represented by like the Randy Meeks character. I love all these familiar faces that I've grown up with, like Neve Campbell with Party of Five, or with Courtney Cox and Friends. and you just have all these amazing scenes. That opening is one of the best openings of all time. That climax, that reveal of the two killers, that's one of the best endings of all time. You have one of the best final girls, if not the best final girls of all time, and Sidney Prescott. So I'm going to give it to Scream. We're splitting hairs here. Both of these are my top 5 horror movies of all time, but Scream is going to get it done. It's just a little bit better for me. It's a little bit more what I'm looking for as a fan. Halloween versus Saw. It's Halloween all day. You had to see this coming. If I'm going to wax poetic about movies like Psycho and Scream, then you know I got mad love for Michael Myers and John Carpenter. The scores in that movie, the iconography of the movie. I just talked about like best endings of all time. Halloween has one of my favorite endings to where he's been shot. He goes over that railing. You look, he's gone. They can't find him. And then we just see all these different rooms and all these different settings he's been in through the course of the movie. And you hear that heavy breathing. Just that evil will always be out there lurking and that the boogeyman cannot be defeated. It's not like that. It's not like that with life, that it's always out there. You're never going to be safe. And that Laurie's life is going to be forever impacted by this one terrible night, this one bad Halloween, the night he came home. So that's why it's going to beat Saw, because Saw is fun, but once I watch it through, I don't need to watch it again for a while because it's really all leading up to that one major twist. And aside from that, it's like, what do you think of with Saw? You don't really get into like Saw 2. That's when they really find the formula and they start giving you all the crazy traps and the grisly torture and the things that you think of when you actually think of that franchise. Halloween, that's what you think of with that franchise. It defines everything. It is the standard bearer, and it's really the last time it was done at like an immaculate level. Now, Insidious versus the Evil Dead. It's going to be chalky. This bracket's maybe starting to look a little chalky, but I'm going to go Evil Dead. Sam Raimi just disturbs the hell out of me, but also makes me laugh. It makes me grin. I am overwhelmed by the creativity of the Evil Dead movies. Every time I watch them, we talked about low budgets with Nightmare on Elm Street. Talk about a low budget. Look at what they did with Evil Dead and what they pulled off. It is absolutely insane. And that movie is so crude and grotesque looking that it actually is a compliment to the filmmaking and makes you feel even more unnerved. You just have to see what's going to happen next. And there are things that I've now watched thousands of horror movies. It feels like there's still moments in the original Evil Dead where I'm like, I can kind of feel my skin crawling. So as much as I love Insidious and I love those characters and the story, let's face it, by the time we get to the further and we see the full-bodied version of the red-faced demon, of the lipstick demon, of Darth Maul, we're like, oh, he got really fluffy legs and little hooked feet, and he kind of moves weird, and it's not on par with something like the original Evil Dead, everybody. All right, so there we go. That's our final 4. And our final 4, we have Psycho, Halloween, Scream, Evil Dead. This is going to get interesting. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm a little scared. Let's go. Psycho versus Halloween. Now, look, you can't have Halloween without Psycho. John Carpenter definitely impacted by Hitchcock and what he did with Psycho. I mean, you even have Dr. Loomis being named after one of the characters in Psycho, but that's not enough for old Norman Bates. Halloween's just way more my type of fare. Like I said, the theme from Halloween that we all know and love and has been on like a bajillion TikToks. But even that, like Laurie's theme, that sad, somber, creepy music that just lets you know that things aren't going to be all right. The fact that this is such a simple setup, but it's just executed so perfectly. You get the prototypical like final girl with Laurie Strode, and we're gonna get that battle over and over again, and for good reason. I love that this is set in the suburbs, and it makes real terror feel like it can happen to anyone, anywhere. It's just way more my bag, and it's not quite as dated as Psycho, even if Halloween is starting to show its age now. All right, Scream versus Evil Dead. I gotta go with Scream. Like I said, Evil Dead, it's kind of terrifying. It's kind of disturbing. It's pretty gross. It's nasty. It's super impressive. But I think this is where it's just a matter of me being a slasher guy, a guy who loves kind of like meta and subtext and just is kind of a smart ass who's watched a lot of horror movies. You can see so much of himself in that Scream movie, and it feels like a love letter from Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven to myself personally. And it did the first time I ever watched it, to where I saw it. I was like, I can't talk about horror movies with my friends. They don't really get it. They don't want. I feel like I don't know anyone who gets me. And I saw that movie, and I was like, oh, there's a lot of people out there like me, because Scream is huge. I see the mask everywhere, and now that I know what the movie is, I'm not alone. There must be like thousands of people out there that know all these movies, that hold them near and dear to their heart, can wax poetic about them, can do all of the quotes. And now I can do that with Scream, because Scream is one of the most quotable horror movies of all time. And there we go. We get Scream versus Halloween. Just like you couldn't have Halloween without Psycho, you can't have Scream without Halloween. Again, with Scream, you have a Loomis character. Both these movies have Loomis characters, which shows you how important Psycho is. So I will still lend credence to that movie and give it all of its credit. Man, this is hard. This is like a real Sophie's choice. This is choosing between your two babies. And I'm going to do Scream. And I know it's going to really upset some people, but for me, Scream just offers the best of everything. I mean, it gives you characters that you love. It gives you a great mystery that actually feels like a good mystery instead of some of the other movies in this bracket, like, say, Friday the 13th. It has a fantastic opening. Halloween has a fantastic opening as well. I just think if you're going to ask me, do you like that long shot with hidden cuts of young Michael going in and stabbing his sister, or do you prefer the kind of cat and mouse game being played over the telephone with Drew Barrymore in the beginning? I'm going to say I prefer the Drew Barrymore thing. Every time I watch the movie and I hear that phone ring and she picks up and she starts kind of playing with him over the phone, and then she gets in way over her head and the Jiffy Pop's catching on fire and her parents are just like out of her reach and her vocal cords have been severed. That's just a heart-wrenching moment that gets you so invested and engrossed into the movie already, and it's only been on your screen for like 5-10 minutes. So I'm going to give it to Scream. I just think it's a little bit tighter. It's a little bit more modern, even though it's, again, dated, but it's much more modern than Halloween. And it just kind of, it takes the bones of Halloween and adds on sort of like this meta commentary. It adds a lot of like smart characters, adds a lot of fun kind of setups that we've all seen before, and then plays with them and subverts our expectations. And I'm much more of a Sidney Prescott guy than I am a Laurie Strode guy. So there you go. That's how I look at this bracket. That's how it all pans out for me. I'm very happy with my final four. You may not have agreed with how I got there, but I'm good with it. Now, I know I probably lost a lot of fans who like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. I'm always going to give it to you honest here on the channel. If you enjoyed this, then please let me know by hitting the like button and subscribing so you can come back for part two, because that's going to be really interesting. And as I look at this bracket now and think about the part twos in these franchises, stuff like Psycho 2, Child's Play 2, Friday the 13th Part 2, Scream 2, Evil Dead 2, I'm like, what the F am I going to do? How do you choose a victor? How do you split those hairs? You'll have to come back to find out how I do so.